Sorry about that. I had a couple of mine.
All right, all good. So let's get started. So Reg and Peter, thank you very much for doing this interview. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries.
So why don't you just tell me first off just how the tour's been going so far?
My pictures have disappeared again. Hang on. Oh, there we are. Okay. Sorry, what was the question?
Yeah, so the Shadowland tour, just talk about that, how that's been going.
Oh, it's going amazingly well. Incredible, really. Astonishing. Yeah.
No, we've played this year more than we've played in many years. You know, just after COVID, you know, we had to, well, through COVID, we had to abandon all touring like most bands and musicians. So we sort of picked up from this album, Shadowland, and the previous album, Great South Road, and
Yes,
just been
an absolute triumph.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. Well, look, for us, it's incredible just to go out and play it to anyone.
Yeah, right. Well, that's good to hear. I was just telling
Brad. No, I mean, in terms of sort of pompous boasting, we have done better than normal. We've had a few full houses, which is quite nice.
Oh no, it's been going well. Yeah, and we've got a fair bit more coming up. So it's, you know, we've been busy and we're staying busy. So that's good.
Great, good to hear.
We started recording a new album the other day.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. So
yeah.
Already, I didn't expect another one to start so soon.
It'll take a while, but you know.
Yeah. It won't see the light of day until sometime next year.
Okay, wow, that's great. Very exciting. So why don't you just let us know about some of your favorite songs that you've written over the years, both for the Mentals and Dog Trumpet? We've
written a lot of songs. It's hard to pick favorites, but I mean, there's a few going back to the Mentals. I mean, you know, we wrote. There was 4 songwriters in the Mentals, so it was always a big spread of songs to go on all the albums. So some songs never made it, and you know, never never got recorded, and other ones got recorded later, and a couple of them filtered through to the Dog Trumpet sort of era, which was the beginning of the 90s. And we had the, you know, Dog Trumpet and the Mentals overlapping for about sort of 8 or 9 years. So some songs would go on Mentals albums, some on Dog Trumpet, but look, going back to the very beginning, Reg had a big hand in the early band of those first few records, and some great songs from that he wrote, like, you know, going back to Egypt and Business and Pleasure, and another great one on Cyclone Raymond was Troop Movements in the Ukraine, which
eerily,
very prescient song, you know, all these years, decades later. It's very topical again.
And Peter had songs like the early ones, like Berserk Warriors, which was a big hit single, actually.
Classic, yes, it's a great one.
Close Again, Brain. They were his early songs of his that were standing out. I'm a bit wary about choosing favourite ones, because the songs that don't get chosen, their feelings are hurt by this type of thing.
I mean, just from that early era, the kind of late 70s, early 80s, I mean, you guys did a ton of great songs, and I mean, Country in the Concrete, yours, Reg, is a great one.
That's a slightly abstract one,
and Peter, I mean, got hit, and Away from Espresso Bongo as well.
Some of those songs are better than others.
Yeah, that's all right.
Well, we've just been playing another one, Surfing, Mullen, Sex and Fun.
I love that. That's one of my favourites of yours. I love that one.
We've been playing that with Dog Trumpet over the last couple of gigs. So we do tend to pull old songs out of that catalogue, you know, that we throw in with the Dog Trumpet sets when we play live nowadays.
Yeah,
So that's good. Yeah.
Got plenty to choose from. I think between us, we've written about 80 odd songs each for the Mentals and Dog Trumpet.
Wow,
Possibly more than that.
Yeah,
Probably
quite a
bit.
few.
it's fantastic. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's hard to say. You often sort of tend to think, about the current lot of songs you've been working on and recorded and put out over the last couple of years. And I mean, songs like "Fucking Idiots" by Reg's song "Fucking Idiots" is a standout from the last album.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yes. I was also wondering, so what are some of your favorite musicians / albums? Curious.
From other people.
Yeah.
I don't have any. I don't listen to music. Don't really like it.
If you go back in time, the songs that you tend to grow up with, the ones that you kind of pull out as some of your all-time favorites. I'm still a bit like that. I mean, just this morning I was listening to some Stevie Wonder, from that sort of around the time of 1972, 73.
Yeah.
Of all that sort of stuff. Plus, bands like the Small Faces, which turned into the Faces. They were a great band. One of my favourite records is "A Nod Is As Good As a Wink to a Blind Horse" by the Faces.
Yeah.
I still like a lot of the really old, folk and country and blues stuff that I started listening to when I was a teenager. A lot of that's really old. Some of it comes from the 20s and 30s, and still think that's great music. But also, in terms of what Peter mentioned, I really like 60s, English pop music too, from the Beatles and the Kinks and the Small Faces and the Stones and all those fantastic bands. I mean, that's a great period of music. Need to see, subsequent stuff, from pop music and Bob Dylan. You can never go beyond Bob Dylan for something interesting, even though some of his stuff's boring as well.
And because I was a bit younger, I grew up with all that stuff too. I listened to all that 60s stuff that was all over the radio. Incredible. If you look at the top 20 from any month in the 1960s, from about 63 onwards, it's pretty incredible, really, and how much music was developed in those sort of 6 or 7 years is amazing. But I also love listening to, apart from the things I sort of was growing up with, was like Led Zeppelin and Deep Purple and T-Rex and all those kind of bands. But I also loved sort of 1950s jazz and Wes Montgomery. I was listening to a lot of jazz guitar of that period, late 50s, early 60s. And I love the recording, the actual recording techniques, and the sound of the music they were recording was amazing from that time. That in terms of jazz, where they were close mic, or not close mic, they're just sort of putting a few mics up in a room, and the drums would be recorded probably with 2 overhead mics, and you just had this amazing sound, which I think a lot of that ethos kind of came through the early 60s, mid 60s, rock and roll recording too. It was done pretty quickly, pretty basically, often in mono. So, it was, and with small desks. They didn't have the big, 24 track desks or more that they have nowadays. Now it's infinite amount of tracks you can have, but so a very different kind of approach to recording. But it sounds great, a lot of that stuff, just because of the restrictions of the technology. But they were using
sometimes,
tape and really nice.
Sometimes there's too much choice with the modern technology.
Right.
Yeah.
It can get can get too smooth and too, perfect or something.
Something about the old tapes they were using too, the warmth of that, it really came through. Analog recording.
Yeah, okay. All right, interesting. Now, so what about when you think of Greedy and Martin's songs, what are some of the ones that stand out to you of theirs?
Well, probably my favorite Martin songs would be "If You Leave Me," "Nips," "Come Around."
Yep.
Yeah. Mr. Natural was a good one.
Yeah. Natural, and with Greedy's, I always thought Greedy's best sort of band playing song was probably "Too Many Times."
Yeah.
And he had a couple of more sort of slightly left field things like "The World Seems Difficult" and "Insurance Man" and to the mountain, so less,
the mountains
not
of
so
the
much his big hits, but more of the album tracks, which are quite interesting.
Well, one of Greedy's ones that are, sorry, Peter, one of Greedy's ones that are kind of a bit different for him that I like a lot is Diesel Moan. Is a fun kind of bluesy rocker,
Oh yeah, well, that was a later one, I think, after we left. I think.
Yeah,
No, that was Liar Liar.
Oh, yeah, that's right. No, it was too.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Liar Liar was. So it was a funny thing about with Greedy being the keyboardist, and he got onto the synthesizers and the sequences and the digital side of recording, which was very much an 80s thing. So for a period there, we sort of turned into an 80s band, where we started as a sort of 70s garage rock band. And, that was not my favorite time because, it was a lot of stuff got sequenced, including the bass and the drums on quite a few of those songs of that sort of late 80s kind of period. But we went back to Liar Liar Pants on Fire, and we went back to sort of the band playing in a room and recording it like a garage band again, like like a live band. So that for me felt like a good return to form in terms of just what I appreciate and what I like to do, and the sound of the band sounding much more like itself again, rather than I just think we made some very successful pop records in the mid-late 80s, but they were kind of done in the method of so many other 80s records. They sound like that too, with the big snare drums up loud and the big reverbs on everything and very clean digital recording. So I like it when it's a bit dirtier and the basic sort of sound of a band in a studio spilling into each other's microphones.
Yeah, me too. I prefer that sound.
Yeah. Yes, it's very good. So speaking of that kind of mid to late 80s period, just want to touch on Cyclone Raymond. You've mentioned in your book, Reg, you talked a bit about some of the issues with Cyclone Raymond when it came to recording it and some of the studio interference with that album. Could you dive a bit more into that?
I can't remember what I said about it now.
Well, just for example, because Cyclone Raymond's the only album that you, Reg, don't have a lead vocal on.
Is that right?
Yeah, and Peter doesn't have any lead vocals on either. So I was wondering the fact that it's just Greedy and Martin. Yeah, yes, I agree. Yes. So I was just wondering if maybe that's an example of the label kind of maybe just wanting Greedy and Martin to make it a bit more, I don't know, like a typical kind of band or something, not with too many lead vocalists, you know what I mean? I'm trying to.
Oh, I'm just trying to remember what's on that album because I still would have written a few songs on the album.
Yeah, you did. You wrote for Cyclone Raymond. You did Oasis.
Oh yeah, well I think me and Martin probably sang that one. Or
Martin did that one. Big Things in Life, which Martin also sung.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And Walls of the World, which again Martin sung.
I'd kind of forgotten about that, but I mean, I didn't really care. I mean, because he often, some of my earlier songs he sang.
Yeah.
Because Martin was a really good singer. I mean, I'm not a great singer, but I can sing, but I haven't got a big voice like him or Greedy. So Martin would often sing my songs, and you want your songs to be on the album. So whether I sing it or someone else sings it is kind of immaterial. But But having said that, I can sing, I can express myself, but it often, because Martin was seen as the lead singer and people liked his singing, and he's more handsome than me. It was a good choice.
Kind of a mix, really, of Martin was a really good singer, so he sang quite most of my songs. I probably got Martin to sing because I thought it was just as easier than me trying to sing them. And then trying to do them live anyway, so because he's such a good singer. So that was one thing. But there was probably also the record company involvement, and there was definitely that sort of 80s thing of trying to steer us a certain way, and we were agents of that as ourselves. But I think we pulled ourselves out of that by the beginning of the 90s with Liar Liar Pants on Fire, and then we only did really I mean, I only contributed to one other album after that, which was Garage.
Yeah.
But I mean, in a way, that was part of the reason that we started doing the dog trumpet. Greedy, bad accident, like falling off a horse. So we had a bit of a hiatus anyway there around that time that we did the first dog trumpet album. So, but that was, we had quite a few songs that obviously were, you'd be writing songs that would never see the light of day because there's only so much room on any one Mentals album. So for 4 songwriters' work. So, it was always a fairly even distribution of songs anyway. But yeah, look, the 80s was a funny time, but not my favorite. I hated it. At times I hated the 80s. I was thinking, why can't we just make records like we used to make? And it felt like, you didn't sort of have control over that for a little while, and so partly we're to blame for that, I suppose, ourselves. And it's just what organically happened.
It didn't always work either with someone else singing your songs. I remember once I had a song called Once So Handsome, and there's the producer at the time, can't remember his name, he got Greedy to sing it and just didn't work with Greedy singing, even though he's a good singer. So we ended up doing it on a dog trumpet album a bit later, and I sang it fine,
He actually was Robin Smith was the producer, I think, English
Robin
guy.
Smith, that's right.
And I think that was Cyclone Raymond era. I think it was.
Yeah,
and at that stage we were using different producers for different batches of songs, so it wasn't very cohesive, and we were stabbing around.
We were desperately flailing around.
Yeah, flailing a lot, and that recording of "I'm So Handsome," it wasn't just Martin. It was Martin sang it. I think Greedy sang a verse. Martin sang a verse. I think you did too, Reg. But it was wrong because you'd done a demo of it, which was great, and so we ended up just sort of recreating the demo for the first dog trumpet album, which is really what the song was all about.
Yeah.
So you got to do things in the make it authentic to the songwriting, and I think we lost touch with a bit of that with 2 or 3 of those Mentals albums.
You often with a song you have to fiddle around anyway, just writing it, getting it finished, and then demoing it and trying different people singing it, different tempos, different beats. There's a lot of different things you can do with a song before you end up nailing it and recording it, and even then you often don't get it right.
No. I mean that's the thing about a lot of those Mentals albums is, I think there's some really good moments on them, and there's other moments where, like, in retrospect, I would can a couple of those songs, shove them off the albums, and make it better. And I think whether or not you think dog trumpet's better, at least we have complete artistic control over it and record it all in my own studio, and don't have to do the committee thing which you do with a full band, and like the Mentals, and 4 songwriters. There was a lot of oars in the water, often steering the boat in slightly different directions
at once.
All at once.
Look, there's a few songs on Mentals albums, of everyone's that I don't particularly like, including my own, so you don't
me too.
You don't have to necessarily like everything you do, because this is one thing that it's always puzzles me about art and music is, you can do stuff yourself that you think, oh, this is crap, but other people, like it or get something from it, or are inspired by it or amused by it. So I don't think you can be, some artists are incredible anal retentive control freaks of their own and perfectionists of their own work, and I think that's sort of slightly stupid, excessive attitude to have.
And the nature of making records with a band like that, it is a bit sort of can be pretty hit and miss, because you're trying all sorts of things, and you don't have that many goes at doing it again. Sometimes it's done very quickly. Those first few records are done, in a matter of weeks. So it's not like you go back to spend a lot more time then tidying them up. But by the time we got to, say, Mouth to Mouth and Cyclone Raymond, I think we did go back and try. Times the songs were sort of done but weren't quite right, so we'd go in with another producer and try and fix them up and tart them up and re-record bits and pieces. And that did happen with Mouth to Mouth. And what's that?
That's been hassling me.
I've got a cat. Cat be hot with this hot weather yesterday.
A bit hot. But yeah, no, we did. We did try. You do try a few things, and often, often rough enough is good enough instead of trying to be too perfect.
Yeah, and in retrospect, we had a lot of pretty great songs with the Mentals that we did. We sort of got pretty close to the mark, and they sound good. I mean, a lot of people, what it's always been a bit of a bugbear for me is that people later on, say now, will be look back and think about the Mentals, and they sort of think of the Mentals, Live It Up. They think of the one song, it's like this almost like a one-hit wonder sort of band. If you were in England, you would think that was because that's probably the only song you ever heard. But I think Live It Up was probably about our 14th single. So
in fact, I think out of all the bands, I think we might have actually had the most top 40 single entries out of any Australian band.
I did see that until In Excess in the 90s. You did, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I'm not sure if they.
I wish they'd shut up and go away then and not.
Yeah, God. We thought we had that record. At least there was some record we had, with the Mentals.
Yeah. Oh, we better get some more. We better get some more hit singles then.
Okay.
Now we're going to record the next Dog Trumpet album and use Mental as anything as the name of the band.
Oh, good idea.
That might work.
Because I'm pretty sure we've got some good hit singles in the pipeline.
Absolutely, I'm sure. Now, Reg, I just wanted to ask. Now, there's a period in the early '80s, kind of around the Creatures of Leisure era, where you and Martin were writing a few songs together. And I just wanted to know, I mean, obviously the big one is Apocalypso, how it was originally, your song, and then Martin kind of added his own spin to it. There was a couple of others, though, for example, I Wouldn't Try to Explain, and also Not Enough, that you and Martin wrote together. And if you could remember, I was just wondering, do you remember how the collaboration was on any of those songs?
No.
No?
Did you co-write Wouldn't Try to Explain?
Possibly, but I can't remember. I mean, I definitely, with something like Apocalypso, I mean, I completely wrote the song, the lyrics and the melody, but I had a sort of a Jimmy Reed, a feel of an old blues song, and Martin had been looking at ZZ Top clips, and Martin he didn't rewrite the tune or the melody, but he arranged it in that.
Just a bit. That's a bit cheeky, really. It was just a rearrangement, just a different feel.
Yeah. So he got the credit more for arranging than writing the song.
Which is kind of funny in a way, because that's sort of funny, because a lot of the time when we were like rehearsing songs with new songs for potential albums, we would try different feels anyway. So it's kind of funny how that one ended up being written down as a co-write, but I suppose that's fair enough in some ways. But
and for those other two, I can't remember the specifics of our collaboration. I would have imagined. But what were the two songs again?
Wouldn't Try to Explain and Not Enough, which were B-sides around that era.
Wouldn't Try to Explain. Yeah. I would have thought they were more Martin songs, maybe, but I must have contributed something. I can't remember.
Not Enough. Whose song was that? Was that yours?
I thought that was more Martin's.
But according to the
I can't even remember how it goes, actually. So
yeah, you're not going to get much out of us.
No, that's all right. It's 40 years ago, so it's understandable.
It's funny because someone, a guy, contacted us recently, and he, for some reason, he was wanting to know some of the lyrics of some of my B-sides, like obscure early tracks, and I googled them and started listening to them, and I could decipher some of it, but there was lines in there I just couldn't know what the hell's it talking about. I just could not decipher it. Just the odd word, but he was struggling with most of it.
No, fair enough.
I mean, a lot of these albums too, we haven't even listened to for since they were pretty much contemporary, at the time. Yeah. So, you don't tend to go back and listen much to stuff, and unless it sort of pops up for some reason on some listening device.
If someone asks you to play one of those songs, you've really got to listen to it and do the homework to learn how to play it again.
Course,
and even then, you're struggling to pick some of the chords or the words.
I mean, with the COVID thing, because we couldn't play live, we did do a bunch of Facebook sort of shows, just the two of us
That's right.
in the back room here, and we sort of went back to a lot of those old songs from the Mentals catalogue, and did actually look at them again and learn how to play them. And we just did renditions of things like Business and Pleasure, and I think Blacktown to Bondi, and I think we had to go at quite a few of the Brain, songs that we really hadn't played for decades.
That was great.
Yeah, it was fun actually. It was great replaying some of those songs, because you forget, they're pretty good songs, some of them. You just haven't played them for years or looked at them for years.
And some of them, that seem deceptively simple, actually are quite complicated and quite sophisticated. Yeah, because you sort of think of us as being pretty much a 3-chord band in a lot of ways, but not really.
No. That's very good. Just wondering, what did you think of some of Martin and Greedy's solo stuff, like Plaza Suite and Love Harmonica, for example?
Oh, they had some good tunes on them. I mean, and Martin had a big hit with Concrete and Clay, which is one of his solo, a cover obviously on one of his solo albums. And then we played it in the Mental set.
Yeah.
But and Greedy had a couple of catchy songs on his first solo album, I remember.
Apart from that, it's a long time ago too. I haven't listened to those albums for
me
decades
neither.
either.
I'd have to, and Martin also did a cover of Lou Reed songs, which had a couple of good ones on it too.
I actually thought that was interesting. Was Martin, like, did you know that Martin was a big Lou Reed fan or anything? Did you?
No, not really. It would in a way it would be the furthest thing you'd think from Martin, because Martin tended to like, he liked the Monkees. I mean, he liked the Monkees, and the Beatles were probably his favorite in the 60s. So like
pop stuff,
smoother sort of pop stuff, and later on he liked some of the dance music, in the 80s and 90s, and so it was a slightly odd choice for him in a way.
So too, yeah.
I mean,
because Martin was so good at singing some of those covers that we did, like Elvis. We used to do all. In the early days of the Mentals, we were generally just playing all covers. And that's what
Martin could sing Roy Orbison songs.
Oh, he really could,
convincingly, which is incredible. He's got an incredibly difficult high voice, and Martin can actually sing that.
So Martin loved all that sort of stuff, like Roy Orbison and Gene Pitney and Elvis Presley, all those kind of great singers from that period. And he was one of the few singers really, and who could really get away, could really render it very convincingly. Like Working for the Man that we recorded. That's incredibly hard song just from the very beginning of it.
Yeah.
Hey there, you better listen to me. That's really difficult stuff to do.
Yeah, very, very high singing.
Martin definitely had the pipes for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Now I was wondering, do you recall, just going back to the kind of the more collaborative songwriting with the Mentals, because obviously you did have not many, but you had a handful of tracks that you did write kind of, as a group, like Looking for Bird, for example. Was there many more tracks like that maybe didn't get released that were, written together?
No, not really. No, we didn't do many, and those little collaborations we did were fairly sort of slightly, chaotic, and they tended to be like, this is going to be an album track or a B-side. It wasn't like we were thinking these are singles. They were kind of more throwaways in a sense.
Another one of those was Holiday in Auckland.
Yes.
Probably the last thing on Cats and Dogs, which was
right,
I think we did late at night one night, after at the end of the session.
Yeah. So our collaborations were more shambolic. They weren't particularly well structured in terms of who contributed to them. It was they were just kind of, strapped together.
Yeah, because there
was Flights of Fancy.
Yeah.
Yeah, Flights of Fancy.
Because there was one track I'm thinking about in particular. It was a I don't know if you even remember. It was a B-side from Liar Liar called No Tomorrow. Don't remember that
Don't
one?
remember that.
Can't remember
That's
that
a
one.
beautiful song. I'm surprised it didn't make it onto the album actually, because it's really good.
Is that
Who's
Martin?
singing it? Who's singing it, you know?
Martin sings it, but the writing credit is just Mental as Anything. So
Oh, right. Oh, okay. Oh, I'll have to have a listen to that one. I've forgotten that one.
What was it, the B-side to?
just on maybe the B-side to, I don't know if it was maybe on the Mr. Natural EP or Marianne or one of those.
Oh, okay, around that time. Right.
Yeah.
It's a bit, it's kind of spooky sometimes, because sometimes you'll hear a song, you know, through a car window or someone else is playing it. You think, oh, that sounds familiar, you know, and then after a while, you
Wonder who that is.
oh, it's actually the Mentals or Dog Trumpet, you know, and it might even be your own song, and you think, oh, that sounds familiar, and you eventually realize it's one of your songs.
When we do songs, when we learn our old songs now, we have to really sort of work hard at remembering them and try to commit them to memory, you know, and get those lyrics back in their head. So, you know, some people have a capacity for just remembering just about everything I've ever heard or done, and just, you know, and just dialing them up.
Like Bob
Drop
Dylan.
it, but I can't do that.
Yeah, that's
I mean,
understandable.
apparently Bob Dylan knows thousands of songs, and he can listen to a song and immediately knows all the words. He must have a
Wow.
super.
I think Willie Nelson can do that too.
Yeah, maybe.
I think Willie said at some statement, he said about, you know, every song he's ever written, he can remember them. Yeah, which is a big statement.
Yeah, that's good.
Now, obviously, this is there's the Mentals book coming out in November, which is very exciting. The first kind of biography on the Mentals. Do you have anything you'd like to say about that?
Yeah, well,
No.
it's a religious self-help book.
Oh, really?
Just trying to help the
Nothing
kids
to do with the
today
Mentals.
help the kids of today with their problems.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's it's an accurate narrative of what the band did, basically from start to finish, and Stuart's he's talked to a lot of people, you know, that were associated with the band, but, you know, musicians, producers, roadies, ex-friends, wives, girlfriends, what have you. So he's actually, you know, he's done quite a bit of homework in terms of that sort of thing, and he's talked to the band members as well. So
He's talked to all of us, and we've seen.
Covers it all.
Pardon?
It pretty much
yeah.
covers the
It does. I mean, it's sort of
narrative arc.
It's not for I mean, for the band, it's been difficult reading because it's hard to look at, you know, read something about yourself, and a lot of it's just it skates around what happened. You know, it's their versions of what happened. You know, because people seem to have different memories of things at times. So it was weird. You know, it was a bit like pulling teeth as far as getting us to react to it, because we were all a bit startled, like rabbits in the headlights. You know, when you sort of read that stuff. And we had to sort of we helped with a few corrections and amendments.
Okay. And is there any update on the documentary?
The documentary is still underway. There's I think funding has almost been acquired. So with those kind of films, a long part of the process is getting it funded. You know, that's always a tricky part. So that's kind of moving along a bit more slowly. But, you know, we've already done a fair bit of interviewing for that, and Matthew Walker, the guy that's doing it, he's talked to quite a few people as well already.
Yes, I think that is actually well on its way. So, but look, making a film can take a long time. So he's been working on that slowly, you know, gradually for a year and a half or so.
So that'll be out sometime next year.
That's good to hear. And I just last question, guys. Do you have maybe a favorite story, or maybe some standout from your time in the Mentals that just you kind of think about and you think that was a really good memory, you know, it was a good time?
No, not really. No,
nothing, nothing at all.
It was really unpleasant for 22 years.
Close, gloomy period of frustration and disappointment.
I mean, look, you know, I joined the band. I was the youngest. I joined when I was 19. You know, not that long after I left high school. So my whole kind of, you know, young adult life and early middle age I spent in the band. So it was, it was my whole life for all that time. So, and it was a great experience. I mean, it was always evolving, and we were always on the road, and we played a hell of a lot of shows, like thousands of shows. And especially in those early days, we were working enormous, like tours and doing 6 nights a week, which all the bands could do back in the late 70s, early 80s. All the suburbs of Sydney and Melbourne and every city of Australia had, functioning gigs, and every small town you could play at in between the cities. So there were big circuits that you could do back then. It seems to be, everything has changed. It was a simpler terrain back then, because you had record shops and you had records, and so it was fairly easy to get the mechanics of it. But now it's everything's digital. You got streaming, you got all these different sort of ways in the net and the internet. So it's a very different kind of world.
I'd say apart from obviously doing some of the big concerts with enormous crowds, like we did an early one outside the Opera House when we just started. We only played probably a few songs with lots of the big bands at the time. That would have been 1980.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was the sort of turn of the decade.
That's right. And then we played on the Australia Made tour, even though we didn't get included in the film because there was an argument between our manager and the NXS manager, and so some of those big gigs are pretty exciting, particularly the big festivals and that. And but apart from that, I mean, it was interesting and enjoyable to see the world, because not just Australia, we really got around Australia and New Zealand, Europe, played in Asia, United States, Canada. We did get around and saw some interesting things, and you get to see the art museums in those places, which interested us all because we were all art students, and we liked food, so you get to go to a few restaurants, so it's got all those extra outside of the music performing things. There's definitely some interesting and exciting aspects to it.
And a lot of that stuff is exciting, especially when it's the first sort of edition, when you haven't been somewhere before, and you going for the first time, so new experiences. And so we're all kind of experiencing new things over and over and over. And then gradually, you've done it a lot, and you've done the same places a lot. So some of the gloss wears off. And when after towards the end there, I was sort of thinking I'm ready to just have a change and do something different after 22 years of it. So that was a big reason that we sort of left, was just that we had Dog Trumpet going, both artists, so we're doing that as well, and the relentless touring was just getting to be just too grinding. It was so we sort of pulled out of it.
Probably the last 10 years or so of the bands, because again, we weren't doing that much new music. I think we did 2 albums in that last 10 or 12 years, and and the circuit is starting to reduce a bit. The audiences are reducing, and you're often sitting in a disco at 1 a.m. in the Latrobe Valley or something, waiting to go on, listening to the pounding disco music coming through the wall, and you start thinking, like, this is not so romantic.
And when you're young, you also have that different kind of capacity for all that stuff. We're all kind of partying on a lot more at that age, and so you don't sort of think about it in the way you do when you get a bit older, and we got families, and you got reasons to go home.
Now, I hate to cut you guys off, but we're about to run out of time. So I just want to say again, thanks a lot for taking the time. It was a great interview. And take it easy, guys. Have a good rest of your tour.
We'll come. Where are you? Come and see us play some.